Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlock Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson. Always my pleasure to be here with you guys on an amazing, it's a Wednesday morning here in Australia. And boy, it's been an early start for me. I had a webinar this morning at 5 a.m. So got up at the crack of dawn and we kind of had an amazing webinar this morning and it went for an hour or so. So I feel like I've been going all day already and it's only 10 a.m. So for those of you that are here, welcome. Today I've got a super special treat for you today. It was one of my amazing friends and I love him to bits. He is one of the nicest people you could ever meet and he's freaking good at what he does. So that's the reason why I asked him to be on the show. So I want to introduce you to the amazing Bowtie Steve, also known as Steve Bartisco. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Tracy, it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Like, I can't wait to have this discussion. I mean, part of what we've been doing in this season of the Unlock Show is really helping people to unlock their message inside of them, how to share their message in a really authentic and genuine way. But make no mistake that whilst we're in business, we also need to make sure that, you know, we're creating profit and we're creating cash flow in our businesses, because if we weren't able to do that, then it makes it very, very difficult for you to maintain a business and stay in business for the long term. So I think this topic that we're going to be talking about today with the how to leverage that power of your personality, that really helps you to use the personality that you have in both sales and marketing is super, super important. And I can't wait to share that. And if you guys haven't already noticed, you notice that I called Steve Bowtie Steve, and also the fact that he's wearing a bow tie now. So no doubt that Steve is going to tell us a little bit about that and why he wears the bow tie and how that actually translates into the personality of his business. So let's kind of get stuck in. Let's talk a little bit about where you've been and what you've been up to, Steve, and how you've come to be the really successful entrepreneur that you are, that really helps people to overcome their internal self-limiting beliefs, that helps them to then create a really powerful personal brand that helps them with both their sales and their marketing. How has that come to be?
Sure. It's a great question. Well, I tell you what, it wasn't by design in my case. As far as bow tie, as far as getting into this, it was purely by a fascination on my part, as a matter of fact. I've been in digital marketing now for, let's say, over 10 years, and I come the way of automotive glass, which you wouldn't think that they have anything together, and frankly, they don't. But in the automotive glass field, the company I was working with, we actually lost a major contract that we had. We were working with some large fleet companies, rental car companies across the United States, and we happened to lose our largest contract. And the only way that we could save our business and really stay afloat is by turning to internet marketing, to digital marketing. And this was really kind of the gateway for me on how to get into this, what you could actually do in today's modern world. And thank goodness, predating some of the issues that we have seen over the past few years here, of course, certainly over the past year. But it really led to this fascination of, oh my gosh, what is possible online? What can you do? And to go with that, certainly to add on to that aspect is really my curiosity of what impacts the idea of creating a memorable experience, right? And I bring it to you this way, is no matter what we do in business, no matter how innovative our product or service is, we are always going to find competition. And I don't mean that as though someone's going to just take our idea, our method, and create something like that. Yeah, that is possible, absolutely. But think of it from this point of view, the consumer point of view, the customer point of view. I don't know the difference, right? As a consumer, I don't know the difference. Let's take a scheduling software, and I don't want to speak ill of any of them, but what's the difference between, let's say, an Acuity scheduling, a Calendly software, Schedule Once, they all run together to me. It's all a commodity. I don't have a preference one versus another. Maybe it's something someone recommended. Maybe it's user experience. Maybe it was a bad experience. Here's the problem, though. In business nowadays, so many businesses are operating on this function of competing on their features, right? I have the better mousetrap, or I can do this mousetrap in 3.2 seconds. Well, I can do that with less bandwidth. And for me as a consumer, I don't know the difference between them. Okay. When the businesses are competing on the differences of minute features, there's nothing that stands out in this case. So I prefer to look at it like this. The businesses, the best way that you can stand out is by leveraging the one aspect that your competition can never, ever replicate. That's you. That's your stories. That's your personality. And that's how you can stand out versus the competition, because your business, your customers are going to follow you as much as they do the business, the product, the software that you run. And an example for you to compare that, Elon Musk, right? Mm-hmm. Elon Musk of Tesla fame. Elon Musk has got more followers on social media than his companies do combined, than does Tesla or Boring Company or SpaceX. It's Elon Musk that people are paying attention to and want to emulate in this regard. And this is a fascinating opportunity that I'm happy to explore, happy to help others really leverage in their case, because it's not about finding and touching all customers. Honestly, it's not about touching all customers. It's about getting the right ones to do business with. Because I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you end up getting the wrong customer in, but I'd rather work twice as hard to get the right customer than half again to get that wrong customer in that I'm going to hate life.
Totally. And I think that's really, really important, is that whenever you're building a business, and this is something that I've spoken about on, these shows before, is like building your business around the type of clientele that you want, so that you wake up every day actually enjoying the people that you are, that you are serving, enjoying the people that you need to spend the time with. What's really interesting about this, Stephen, for the longest time, brands have been about, I need to create a brand for my business. And what I'm hearing you say is that there's this really quantum leap shift from create the business brand, because even though in the story that you told, your company had a brand, the company had a brand. However, they didn't have a personality. And that's the real major shift here, is that you're using, now what you're talking about is actually using the unique personality that you and only you have, that starts to build the credibility, the trust, and the followership of your viewers, and also of the tribe that you are trying to attract. Just like that really interesting point that you made about Elon Musk. How interesting is that? If he was still going down that same old route of the old days where he was building a brand for his companies, well, he wouldn't have anywhere near the number of followers that he's got right now, because he has built his own personal brand. So let's talk about kind of that in the sense of, like, I'm really fascinated by what you've done to build your own personal brand, because I know that's kind of where the whole bow tie story kind of has come from, and where that persona has come from. So let's talk a little bit about that, and why you went down the path of creating the bow tie Steve brand.
Sure, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, on my behalf, it still by happenstance, which sometimes that happens, but really leveraging that and running with it when there was an opportunity. So let me explain. I grew up having this belief, and that's a whole separate story, but a belief that I was trapped as an introvert and couldn't get in front of people, couldn't put myself out in front of a crowd, attract attention in any way, shape, or form. Well, this perpetuated into what I started doing for a living, remaining in the background, working just in operations, trying to do my best not to get that attention. Well, I was in the industry, internet marketing, as you may recall here. I got into the industry, and the particular facet of the industry that I got in, there was a regular yearly program, a convention that we would go to in Las Vegas, Nevada. And preparing for this one year, of course, I want to look dapper. I want to at least present myself, not for my own benefit, but really for the business benefit. If we're meeting potential clients, I want to at least look presentable and not strike the wrong chord. So I find myself at this department store one year, and at this department store, as I'm looking around for clothes, I happened by this bow tie that was on clearance, believe it or not. And I thought, hey, that's fun. I'm going to get that. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to buy this bow tie. And as we go to this industry convention and the parties, the evening parties and soirees that we would go to as a business, I decided one night I'm going to put this on, right? And still, the person that is putting this on was the one who never believed that they had anything special to say, that they really, me, right? I didn't have anything special to say is what I thought. Nobody wants to talk to me, so I'm going to stay in the background. Well, interestingly, when I put this on and I go to this industry event, the complete opposite happened. As a matter of fact, not just that, but people started coming up to me and they started asking about me. Oh my gosh, that's a bow tie. Look, nobody else is standing out. Nobody else is doing this. Why do you have that? Who are you? What do you do? And I realized, oh my God, I can be a completely different person in this regard. And they're going to come to me. I don't have to go seeking them, getting that attention. Now someone's going to seek me out. And it was a fascinating change for me. So just for the fun of it, as I'm part of this high-end coaching group, and we started going together, you remember the group, of course, you know, as we started gathering at these small events, I decided to play this again. I decided, hey, you know what? It worked before. I'm going to bring this bow tie out and see what happens in the same sort of way. I noticed nobody else is there. Nobody else is standing out in the same regard. Nobody's wearing a bow tie. And instantly it became this mental magnet, if you will, that stuck in someone's mind, that folks understood who I was, what I was about, the brand and the purpose and the values, most especially, that I shared and wanted to make sure that I was able to pass on to others. And this was just that one mental model. Now, truth be told, it did something more than that, right? Because I looked at it in a way of any of these ideas of hurtful comments, put downs, any of the risk that we may feel as we put ourselves out there in marketing, especially online, the haters and trolls, if you will, in the online world. These brave keyboard warriors are who are happy to talk ill about you, happy to speak ill and say how they can do it better. You ever notice, by the way, that they never do that? They never actually get out there and try and present themselves. No, your competition actually celebrates you and likes to talk about, what we might do differently, or even that they're friends of yours. They're not going to speak ill about you personally, but those trolls are always out there. The interesting part is this bow tie allowed me to, I look at it almost like a shield, right? Almost as though I'm wearing this suit of armor, as though I'm a medieval knight. And here I am with this shield in front of me. And no matter what they say, when I have this on, I know it doesn't affect me because they're saying this about a character that I can put down. Right? It doesn't have to anything to do with me personally. It's about this marketing character that I get to put down and take off and go celebrate with my children afterwards. Or family or friends. I can be someone else, arguably more free online with this than the ideas of these slings and arrows touching me if I were to share my real person, my everyday person. but that everyday person is now the burden of those previous stories, the burden of you can't do that, you can't put yourself out there. I don't have that same problem when I put on this shield, this totem, as Todd Herman would say. It's a really fascinating opportunity in this case to step away from yourself.
Yeah, and what's fascinating about this is obviously this is like evolved this way over like a period of time, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to put this on not because I was trying to, like you say, stand out, but by doing something that was against the grain, doing something that was different to everybody else. I'm sure everybody else in that room either had a standard tie or, you know, no tie at all and was fairly casual. And you rock up with a, you know, a bow tie on. You immediately, people are looking like that is different. That is, you know, that guy over there is standing out. He must be important. He must do something that I want to know about. And like you said, that then creates that magnetic and the magneticness that draws people in. They want to know more because they are intrigued, and that intrigue creates, you know, more curiosity that then they want to know more about who you are and what you're doing. And interestingly, Steve was referring to a program that both he and I were in, and like I said, we've come to know him as Bowtie Steve. That is kind of his signature attire that everybody knows and has become part of his brand. What I find really fascinating about this whole story that you've told here, Steve, is that being somebody who was very always introverted and a bit shy and not wanting to draw attention to yourself, and then being able to put on something, whether it's your sunglasses or it's your, and I've heard lots of other influencers do this too. They might put on a pair of sunglasses or even a string of pearls or whatever the case may be, putting on that bow tie. It's like transforming you into the persona of who you need to be and what you want to show up as. Not necessarily, and I want to talk a little bit more about this because you know, we're very much about being authentic to who you are and, you know, allowing you to shine. And I'm hearing that it's not about necessarily putting on a bow tie and all of a sudden I'm creating somebody else that I'm not, but it's putting on the bow tie and the giving me that extra level of like power and strength and courage to be able to step into the persona that I've created that elevates and amplifies the true me. Is that what's sort of happening? And in your process of what you're doing with clients, is that the same sort of thing that you're getting them to do? And how would you recommend people go about, like if they're really shy and introverted, what are some of the things that they can actually do?
Sure, that's a great question. So let me start by telling you about this. My favorite way to go about it, frankly, I'll share a story in this case. Now, as mentioned, I was introverted, shy, awkward growing up. And I had this problem even as I come to my formative years and having the trouble really touching base, especially when I was interested in dating or finding other people, right, that I might be interested in. So I always had this issue as far as not really fitting in, not really knowing what someone would think of me. And so feeling awkward in that space. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say when I go up and try and chat up a female, perhaps. I would feel the same sort of way. And so I was always awkward and out of place in this regard. And I remember this one day as I'm driving home, of all things, I happened to see this female jogging down the road who I thought was rather attractive. And I thought to myself, you know what? I would love to have a conversation with this person. Now, forgive for a moment the idea of me randomly pulling over in my car to try and have a conversation with someone. It wasn't about that because, yeah, no, I agree. That might be a little bit awkward and out of place. But nonetheless, as I thought about it, I'd love to have a conversation with this person. The immediate, that devil in my shoulder has popped up. The one that said, no, you're introverted, you're awkward, you're out of place. You don't know what to say. You're going to act a fool if you try and do that. And oddly, that one particular day, I had this angel on the opposite shoulder, the one that leaned over and said, "Hey, she doesn't know that." And I thought, "I'm sorry, what?" And again, I heard it. She doesn't know that. She doesn't know that you feel that way. She doesn't know that you're feeling awkward and introverted and don't know what to say. As a matter of fact, you could be the most fascinating person she's ever met. You could know exactly what to say, and you could be quite charming. And the only way that she's going to know differently is if you give her that story, right? If I don't say anything, or if I go up to her unsure of myself, not confident, if I don't have the clarity as to who I am and why someone should talk to me, that's me handing the story to someone else, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way she's going to know that is if I hand her the story. But if I gave her something else, if I gave her a different story about who I am, how would she ever know the difference? As a matter of fact, that same person that I always imagined who I could be, if I felt confident, if I felt more outgoing, why not take the opportunity to share that with someone else? Right? That self, that hidden self, the one who is there, who might act differently if only you weren't bogged down by the stories of your past. Why not share that to actually get the person who you really want to be and who you really want to have conversations with? And I think that's a fascinating experience, is when you actually get the opportunity to step outside of yourself and free yourself from those chains of the past stories. This gives you the opportunity to present to the people you actually want to reach. Because believe it or not, this business that you create so often is there to help the earlier version of yourself. Right? The business, Absolutely. The services, the products that we create, so often we create them because we ran into this issue. Mm-hmm. And we wish that there was a solution. And so we go down this road of finding a solution. And now here we are with a product or service to provide to the earlier version of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And what better way to do that than show them the personality of who you can become with this product or service, right? Mm-hmm. You're no longer held back. If you only had that easy button or the way to reach the person you really want to, and how you do it is through my product or service, now you're reaching that aspirational transformation, that aspirational idea of who you can be with the product or service, the results that you're going to get, right? And this is ultimately what we're selling. In business, we sell that result. We don't sell a product or a service. We sell a result, and it's simply up to our product or service to deliver upon that result. Right?
You make a really good point here, Steve, and I think often, particularly when we're trying to build a new business or a new brand or whatever it is, often we're looking outside of ourselves when most of the time the answer is actually within us. And like you have just mentioned here, it's like, what can I do? How did I get to the point that I'm at right now? If I look back in my journey and I think about where was I at the point where I needed some form of transformation, I needed to make a change. Where was I then? Because that's often the place that you need to start with, serving your audience and serving your customer. Because if you can show them the pathway of what it was that you did, and of course with your brand story, with you being able to use the bow tie as your your shield of armor, and being able to put that on and create the new persona and step out of those ties and those shackles and the chains that you had created, to now step into your power as the bow tie Steve, then they're also going to want to do that too, because there are so many other people out there that are struggling to like you were at that time, where you were introverted and not really sure, but now using the use of story and also creating a persona that you now can go out into the world and share really, really confidently. Which leads me to this next piece. So I know that a big part of what you do is around like creating story frameworks. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I think as you've progressed on your journey, the one thing that you've become really good at is like telling those stories. And you mentioned that about, you know, wanting to approach the girl who was running on the side of the road. I don't know if that's now your wife, by the way, if that's kind of was kind of the end result of that initial conversation, or it was just a lovely lady that was running alongside the road and you had a great conversation. But nonetheless, it was that story that you were telling yourself at that time. You then stepped forward and started to tell your own story to her, which then allowed you to continue the conversation, continue to get to the point where, you know, she knew you, she liked you, she trusted you, maybe she even loved you and got married. Who knows?
Yeah, this is really
there. You have to tell us, is that the woman that you married?
No, as a matter of fact, it was not. I never actually went and spoke to that young woman. I was so flabbergasted, as a matter of fact, by these thoughts that started going in my mind. I don't even know where she turned to start running towards, but I got so lost in thought that I have no idea what happened to her. So hopefully a long and happy life for her, as a matter of fact. So my wife appears certainly in other stories of mine. Yeah. This one just happened by maybe that muse to lead me down this path, if you will.
Absolutely.
But the stories for me, I look at it this way. The stories are really our way to learn, right? The stories, the ones that matter, the ones that stay in our mind. Well, let me ask you, Tracy, if you don't mind. The stories, I don't know how many stories you've heard or read or listened to, or certainly perhaps children with grandchildren, whomever. How many stories have you gone through, myths or legends, fairy tales? How many stories do you recall now that, hang on a second, that did not have some sort of moral or lesson to them?
None, very few, or none. They will
exactly.
They've all got some method in their madness.
Exactly. You know. Exactly it. So this is how our brain works: is in these story formats. We're wired, as the author, and forgive me, I'm escaping on her name for a moment, but Wired for Story. There's a great book out there. And it really details this idea as far as how the human mind works. It's based on these stories. It's based on what has happened before, real or imagined stories in this process, the same way we dream, if you will. Stay with me for a moment. We don't simply dream in a color or an emotion. I don't dream about orange. I don't dream about happy. Right? No, it's more a matter of I'm either in or witnessing a narrative unfold in front of us. So understanding that and knowing that these stories are here to teach us some type of lesson, some types of moral in this case, they're really there as that blueprint for us, right? And this is what we rely upon as humans, is to understand these stories. And this is what we remember, more so than exactly what somebody said. So to piggyback on the idea of the personalities, we would go, you and I have gone certainly, to some industry events. Russell Brunson's Funnel Hacking Live, I'll give you this example. They have a multitude of different speakers come on stage and share whatever the subject may be, whatever the tactics might be, the special widgets, or however to go about it. And more so than anything, it's the stories and the personalities that we remember more so than exactly what they said on stage at that point. Mm-hmm. And we become these fans and want to learn more of these speakers and get further into what they provide, how their solutions work, because we relate to them, their stories, their personality, and it's this relation that leads us further down. Well, this, in this case, is our opportunity in marketing and entrepreneurship, right? When we understand that, it's the stories and the personalities that our consumers really want to get into. And as the brand strategist Sasha Strauss says, your consumers don't like celebrities. They like celebrated lives. And this is their opportunity here to feel a part of you and your story and come along, because they see this aspirational concept of where they could be, who they could be, if only they had the product or service that your solution provides. You see? So knowing that these outsized personalities, and they don't have to be over the top in this case, but these outsized personalities is really how marketing has evolved over the past few years. And this is who drives that message. It's no longer really these traditional nameless, faceless, I'm just going to follow the General Motors, General Electric, these large faceless corporations. It's the ones that you can actually relate to that drive modern conversation in this case, right? And it leverages, if you know who Robert Cialdini touches on this in his book, Influence, it's that which we like, or the authority figures in our field. Those ones are really driving this conversation now. Well, I ask in this case, rather than leave it to happenstance, what if we crafted that idea, the story, the message, based on the stories, the lessons that we want to teach, the values that we hold dear, and the personalities that are going to best touch our audience, because we want more of them, right? Why am I going to use a personality or a message or a story that turns off my ideal client? Rather than that, I want more of them, right? I want more of the earlier version of me. And so as a result, if I know that my earlier version of me, just like now, enjoys stories, enjoys, goodness gracious, I've got a Disney poster over my shoulder. I'm not utilizing this as simply I'm a fan. This is really calling out upon my ideal consumer. It's me saying, I enjoy this, and when you follow me, this is what you're going to get. You're going to enjoy these types of stories, these types of references. So rather than hide from that and mute that in what maybe a previous corporate structure might do, I'm going to celebrate that and explore that even more so. There is an opportunity in this case that you can be more of rather than less than, in order to bring that ideal client. And I find that incredibly freeing.
Well, it makes absolute sense to me, Stephen. I mean, even if you can go back as far in history as you like, but storytelling is there, and it is in every culture, in every crevice of of our world. And if you think about even how traditions and culturally are passed down through generations and through families, it's usually through storytelling, and if you think about every single story that's told, whether you think about it from a cultural perspective, they've all got somebody, a character in that story that has a personality of some sort. Like they've got a big personality, whether it be, Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, for example, or in my culture, we have the story of the fables of Maui. So there's a whole lot of stuff and you just mentioned Disney. So, in my culture, we have Maui, and they've kind of used that Maori culture in the Moana movie. So all of those things, whether it be through Disney movies or through books or through passing down traditions, there's one commonality, and that is it's the stories, and it's also the personalities that are created. So you're essentially saying, let's use what's worked for centuries and centuries, and now start using that in a modern day world. Because you also mentioned that for a long time, and particularly in the corporate world, it was like stifling all of that. Don't share any of that. Don't let anybody know that we have anything normal going on, because everything is perfect here, and we'll just create a faceless organization. Whereas now, what we're actually saying is that, hey, the new world, the new shield that you put up to be able to provide yourself with some level of let's call it like padding between you and those that will be throwing arrows and you know, and not being so nice to you online, is by creating these stories, creating a persona, and allowing yourself the grace, the grace to be able to front up, be who you are, but create a brand and a persona around that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for myself, I became fascinated by this idea of how much this modern marketing opportunity is based on that personality and the stories and the values that we share through those stories, through those lessons in this case. And a case in point, for example, as we would walk out of, let's say, Funnel Hacking Live, we'll bring that up again. And I would speak to some of the other individuals that were there witnessing the event with me. And I became so curious about how can so many of the crowd relate to different speakers, right? Some might say these were my favorite speakers. Some might say, no, these were my favorite speakers. And I became utterly fascinated. How does this work? How can you reach this one particular group on purpose rather than on happenstance? Mm-hmm. And I started researching this idea on personality. And I thought to myself at one point, what better industry to study this concept as far as personalities, believe it or not, than professional wrestling? Now, stay with me for a moment, because mm-hmm. your mind might go, hang on a second, that's fake, that's all nonsense. But I want you to understand the point. It's all this scripted narrative, and it's based on the sales that we make from this personality, from this gimmick or shtick, if you will, if you want to use some other terminology. This one facet in order to stick in someone's mind. And if you don't make that stick, the crowd's not going to cheer for you. And if I'm a wrestler, I'm going to find myself out of a job real quick, or I have to change the approach. Right. So I called up my brother one day. Now, my brother growing up, he was always a big fan of wrestling. And we would watch some of the classic, the WWF, now WWE, and growing up, the Hulk Hogan's of the world, and some of these outsized personalities, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, as a matter of fact, to bring it back on Disney and Maui for a moment. But it was really of what can we touch on in order to create that personality that people want to cheer and celebrate, or even when they dislike, in the industry, it would be known as a heel. Even when they dislike, how do you dislike them so much that it causes this emotional, visceral reaction? You see, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Mm-hmm. Right? So the indifference is worse than if someone hates me. And in marketing, that's a curious aspect. So I call him my brother and I ask him about professional wrestling. What can I learn? What can you recommend as far as personalities and creating or celebrating and marketing these personalities? He says, you know what? I recall two individuals, one of them, Steve Austin, also known as Stone Cold Steve Austin, and the other, Mick Foley, commonly known or might be known by multiple names, as a matter of fact, for wrestling lore, might be a Cactus Jack or Mankind. He actually utilized multiple characters, fascinatingly. And he says these two wrestlers in particular, they said the best personality you can use is yourself turned up to an 11. Mm-hmm. Where you're actually getting down to what you celebrate the most, what you enjoy the most, and instead of being less of, being more of that, so you can stand out from the crowd and call upon this ideal audience. So for myself, I'm utilizing this in this bow tie figure, right? I understand that if someone's going to get turned off by a bow tie, by Disney, by stories, I'm not going to enjoy working with them. It's just a fact. I'm not going to, because this is how I work. I commonly am going to think in quotes and movie references and song lyrics, and I'm going to pull out Disney references and share with you the lessons that I learned from these movies or past clients in this regard. And if you're not enjoying that, I'm probably not going to enjoy working with you. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the idea of saying, you're not my ideal audience. You're better served with somebody else. And it's immensely freeing. Those haters and those trolls and those people who would put you down online. And I say two things. First off, thank you for raising your hand and voluntarily telling me that you're not my ideal audience. Thank you. You're freeing me from the obligation of being concerned of your opinion anymore. And secondly, the more that you complain online, the more that someone I do want to work with sees it and actually wants to work with me. In other words, all of their complaints are just boosting my engagement and doing my marketing for me. So complain all you want. Thank you.
It's a very refreshing way to look at things, because I think, like I mentioned earlier, people are often afraid to put themselves out there because they are worried about, you know, what are other people going to say, etc. But when you think about it from this perspective, you are starting to create your own persona. You're creating, you know, the brand of Steve or the brand of Tracy, and you are very, very clear about the person that you want to attract. You're going to be attracting. It's like this attract and repel type scenario. You're attracting all the right people, and at the same time repelling the people that are just not going to be the right fit for you. It will save you a lot of time and heartache because you've got that really dialed in, and you've got, you know, that on point, and the right type of people will start to be magnetized to you. So I absolutely love that whole theory and methodology around how you do that, Steve, and why you do that. So I want to, we could go on and on and on with this conversation, because there's so many gems inside of this, and it's so important. I mean, as you know, I mentioned to you in this show, I'm all about helping people unlock the special messages inside of them. And I think every single person has got that, and you don't need to go and try and be somebody that you're not. But by dialing it up, like Steve said, like that bow tie that he puts on, it dials up his personality. It allows him to be more of the real Steve as to who he is, using these techniques and the stories and the persona that you create to repel and attract the right type of audience means that the right type of people are going to come to you, just like they did when he went to those events and they were like, who is that guy? I need to go and talk with him. I need to check him out. He's doing something that is very, very different to the norm. And the norm, you want to very much try and create something that's a little bit different. The way that you create that is by being you, because then you do not have to compete with anybody else. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Absolutely would. Absolutely would. Rather than trying to fit in, there's a golden opportunity that someone's handing you to say, finally be yourself and speak to the people that you want. And the way you do that is by not blending in. And I think that's the most freeing opportunity that we've ever had, frankly, and then a chance for us in entrepreneurship, in business, to really get that ideal customer that you want, the one that's going to stick with you through thick and thin, that lifetime customer that you can help build because you know them so well. You see, you know them so well because you know that earlier version of yourself. And it's your opportunity to really reach back and say, I have something that you can utilize. It's something I wish I had then. And now is the opportunity for you to utilize it as well.
I want to wrap up today's conversation with, I want to ask you, like, if there were 3 pieces of advice that you could give our audience today that was around how to leverage that power of your personality and maybe help them in sales and marketing, what would be the top 3 things that you would recommend that they do?
Sure. That's a great question. Top 3 things that come to mind for me is, number 1, really get into the heart of who were you on that earlier basis, right? And what I mean by that is that ideal client. the goal is not to try and speak to everyone. It's trying to speak to the right person. Okay. And in this regard, you want to speak to that ideal client. So get crystal clear. And the best way to do that, believe it or not, the best way to do that is to get crystal clear on the person you don't want to help.
Yep.
Right. So if you get crystal clear on the person that is not your ideal client, take the exact opposite, should, if you've done it correctly, should reflect you and who you really want in this case. Number two, rather, understand the stories that you have gone through, that includes the hard times, that includes the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into becoming this new version, that finding the solution, the products that you've created. Why did you do it? Those stories help establish that commonality that your audience is really going to relate to, right? And in this case, you're also going to leverage the opportunity of understanding what the objections they have. Right. And this is one of my favorite things to do, is those stories that I have. Like I mentioned, they always are going to have some lesson or moral to them. And so ultimately, this just becomes a bit of a card game, a mental card game. Now, in the States, we reference it as the card game known as War. In UK, I believe it's known as Battle, perhaps. But the concept is, if you've ever played it, you're going to lay down a card, right? And whoever has the higher card wins that hand. If you lay down, Tracy, a 10 and I put down a 3, you're going to win that hand. Well, I look at it simply just a matter of a card game, right? And so my favorite trick is this, is when you get crystal clear of who you want, when you have that bank, if you will, that story bank that you can draw from, now it's just a matter of understanding this card game, this mental card game, because any reason that you wouldn't want to communicate with me, buy from me, learn from me is just a matter of a story in your mind, right? This objection that you have. And so it's my opportunity in marketing to play a better hand. It's my opportunity to say, this is your story. I'm going to beat it with a better story, a more memorable lesson, and how you can overcome that objection. And so now it's just a mental card game for me. You play this hand, I'm going to play a better hand. And once I do, that objection is broken. And it's an absolute blast to me playing that mental card game, because it gives us the opportunity to really touch the values, the morals, and the way that our mind works as humans, is leveraging those stories.
Thank you so much for sharing, those three things. I think they are super important, and all of the things that you've shared today in terms of like being really creative in the way in which you're showing up into this world, and being proud and being confident with whom you are, wearing that bow tie and saying, well, this is me, this is bow tie Steve, this is what I stand for, this is what I do. And then actually the things that you've put together in terms of like the frameworks, and they all seem very logical, and they all make a lot of sense as to why it would be why there's a compelling reason that people should be adding storytelling and creating that personality and that persona, which then is going to lead to increased sales and a better level of marketing for you and for your business, also whilst creating your own personal brand. So I loved everything that you shared today, and I want to thank you so much for doing that. I want to let everybody know where they can get, if you want more of Steve, where do you go? You can go to www.herostoryacademy.com, or if you want to check him out on social media, where's the best place for them to find you, Steve?
Oh, you can find me online. I tell you what, I'll make it easy for you because it's almost near impossible to spell my last name. So simply just look for Steve B. Hero on Facebook. You can find me there, commonly sharing these sorts of stories, the lessons that I have learned, because, hey, I enjoy it, and it's really just an opportunity for me to connect with that ideal audience as well.
All right, so hopefully I've got this right. If you go to Facebook, you can search for Steve B. Hero, and that's where you'll find Steve Bartisco, and you'll be able to follow him, watch more of the stories, and share a lot of what he's going to be sharing online, because they will be all the things that you need to do to create a powerful personality and helping you with sales and your marketing. So I want to say thank you very much for being here, Steve. I want to thank everybody for watching today. Loads and loads of comments kind of coming in this morning, and I just want to make sure that I acknowledge everybody there. We'll make sure that we get into the group and we answer any of those. I'll make sure that Steve has access to them, so that if there are any questions there, Steve will be able to answer them for you. But until next time, guys, I want to make sure that everybody here who watches this show moves forward, that they live their life unlocked, that you find the voice inside of you, that you feel confident and confident enough to be able to share those messages inside of you, and continue to watch the Unlocked show, because I have some more amazing guests here on the show with me over the coming months. So I'll be back again this Friday for another episode of Unlocked, and again next Wednesday, all at 10 a.m. Brisbane time. So thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again next week for another episode of Unlocked. Bye for now.